Hello, bubble friends. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome to the channel if it's your first time. My name is Melinda with Primrose and Pro Bath Products, and today I am making a mushroom-inspired soap. Recently, we released a collection of enchanted-inspired things, and this mushroom soap was one of those, so I am going to walk you through how I made it. The first thing I'm doing is mixing up a tiny bit of soap batter. In this soap, to make the mushroom embeds, I am hand forming them out of soap dough. And so to help hold that up, I wanted a really thick base layer to be able to stand the stems up vertically into. I also wanted my first layer to look like grass, so I'm going with some chromium green oxide from Mad Micas to get that grassy color. Now, I'm not going to lie, between this soap and the fairy-inspired soap that I did, they were really the two driving factors for this entire collection. I've wanted to make a mushroom soap for so long and just knew I had to fit it in, so here it is. All right, mixing the chromium green oxide. Now, don't be scared when you mix certain colors, like especially certain blues and certain greens. They do kind of go through a funky color transformation sometimes, but they do mostly turn out in the end unless they've done something weird with your fragrance oil, which can happen. I think that's one of the things that I didn't really pay attention to when I first started soaping was the actual color of the fragrance oil itself. Now, I did pay attention to the discoloration, which most companies will give you if a fragrance oil will discolor or not. But like you see, I just poured in some of that fragrance oil. The oil itself sometimes has a color or a tint. Sometimes it's clear, sometimes it's reddish, sometimes it's orangish. So paying attention to that as well will kind of help you when you are selecting colors or to know maybe how the fragrance oil will affect your coloring. All right, so first layer went in. I've got the green. I let it set up for a nice long time just to make sure nothing would shift. And then I'm bringing in my soap dough. Like I said, I hand formed it, so I didn't use an extruder or I didn't pour it into a mold, nothing like that. I literally formed the shape by hand because I wanted it to look very, very organic. So now I have to cut it and make sure it fits. I always like to cut to fit as I am putting it in my soap mold, just in case there's a little bit of variance from mold to mold. Like sometimes my molds might be a quarter of an inch off from each other. And so if I had cut it to like a standard length, I might have cut it too short or too long and I'd have to trim it again anyway. So I cut to fit as I am making the soap. Here is my first little stem going in, and then I've got a second one, a little bit of a smaller one going in right next to that. Now that my stems are in and positioned and they're not going anywhere, I'm going to start working on my next layer of soap. So here's my next little batch. Again, I'm breaking it up into layers so they really have time to set. And I wanted to go with kind of a sky-ish blue, so I'm using Tahitian teal from Mad Micas for my sky-ish color. I say sky-ish because they do make straight sky blue micas, but I wanted it to have more of that fantasy vibe to it. So I thought Tahitian teal would be a really good fit for that. Again, don't get scared by the color in the pot. This is one that does turn out a little bit differently once it has gone through saponification. So now that I have all of that mixed up and I've blended some of my color in, I'm going in carefully with a spatula and my soap dough. I don't want to break that layer through the green. I want it to be a nice, crisp, clean layer. So even though the green layer was very, very set, I still wanted to be careful and just make sure and go in with my spatula. I have to go around each side of those little stems, so the pouring got a little bit tricky here, but I powered through and made it happen. I wanted to pour just equal to where the tops of those stems were so that when I set in the mushroom caps, they'll be sitting on top of those stems. I did mess up a little bit where I kind of got that blue over the top of the stem, and I went back and I tried to clean it up so it wasn't so obvious. Right there. I overdid it a little. So I gotta clean that up so that the soap top sits flush with the little stem beneath it. For the little mushroom caps, I also made those by hand, not with a mold. So I took some red soap dough that I had made and some white soap dough that I had made, and I rolled them into different size cylinder shapes. And then I mushed them together, and then I formed the little semicircle like you would see on the mushroom cap or the top of the mushroom. So when you look at it from the outside, it kind of looks a mess, but when you slice into it, it'll look like the red mushroom cap with the little white polka dot type things or spots that you would see on like a toadstool mushroom. I'm putting in a little bit more of the Tahitian teal soap batter carefully so that it can help hold those mushroom caps in place. And then I'm tapping it down a little bit to try and get any air bubbles that might have happened out of there before I move on to my next step. Now I wanted the top of this to have sort of an ombre look where it would go gradually from that Tahitian teal into more of a sky-ish blue color. So I am going with Aphrodite, I believe it is, for the colorant on this one. If you really have to know, let me know in the comments and I'll come back and I'll tag you. I'll look it up. But a lighter blue, more of like a true sky blue with some shimmer in it, which I thought was perfect for this type of a soap. So I'm mixing in that colorant, and then I'm going to be adding little bits of it into the Tahitian teal and then pouring, and then adding some more little bits of color and then pouring, and so on and so forth until all of my soap batter is gone. Now, I'm done with that portion of my soap, but I'm not done with the soap itself. For this one, I really wanted to top with some toadstool mushroom caps on the top of the soap. And so I'm mixing up a little bit more soap batter with that chromium green oxide to reflect that grass color we had on the base layer of the soap. This I'm going to whip up and I'm going to let it set until it gets pretty thick. And then I'm going to be piping it on the top of the soap so that it looks like little spiky grass bits coming out. One tip I really like to do, and depending on how much of the soap batter you're working with, you may need a larger or a smaller vessel, but I take a cup and then I put my piping bag inside that cup and fold the edges of my piping bag over so that it holds it in place. That way I'm not trying to fight with filling the piping bag and it's spilling all over the place. This helps hold everything nice and steady and in place while I pour the soap batter in. The other thing that I do is I will use those silicone bands or even a rubber band if you don't have the silicone bands. You can get them from any baking department at your local hobby place or even on Amazon. And I put one of those right on the end before the piping tip, and that will help hold the soap batter in place. If your soap batter is a little runnier than you wanted it to be and you need more time to let it set, having that little band there just keeps it from running out all over the place until you're actually ready to start piping or your soap has set up enough to start piping. I'm just going with a star tip on this one, and like I said, I wanted it to look like spiky grass. So it's a super simple piping. I can't claim to have any really fancy piping skills here, and I'm not worried about the gaps in between because I am going to come back with those mushroom caps, and that will help me to fill in any of those blank spaces that are in there Towards the end here, you can see I did not have quite enough of my soap batter, or soap frosting as some people call it. So I'm really trying to squeeze out every little last bit to cover as much of the top of the soap as I can. My math calculations were a little off. And then I'm coming over with some glitter. This is biodegradable glitter because all fantasy inspired soaps need a little bit of glitter. So I came in with this spray, which wasn't working. I think the micron size of the glitter I tried to put in there was too big for that particular pump. So then I came back with some hollow glitter from Mad Micas, which is probably one of my favorite glitters to use because it just catches so many different colors. It works with so many different soaps. Now I'm coming in with my little soap Embed mushroom caps. For these, I took that red soap dough I had made, the same color that's on the inside, and I made little half circles, or half spheres, technically they would be. And then I rolled out some little tiny white spots and pressed the spots on and made sure that they were nice and pressed on there. And then I set all those to the side until I was ready to make the soap. And since I had them all ready to go, now that I have my piping on, I could just come back and place them where I needed them to be. I made all different sizes of these mushroom caps because I wanted it to have that natural feel to it, that organic feel to it. And also, if you're doing a lot of embeds on the top of a soap like this, it's nice to have different sizes to be able to fill in all of the space. So here's the close-up of what the soap looks like on the top. You can see the sparkle a little bit more from there. All right, my soap has sat for about 24 hours at this point, so I get to slice into it, which is my favorite part because that's when you get to see if it actually worked or not. So my first little edge slice, I didn't get quite to where the mushroom cap embed started. You can kind of see on that slice I just took away that you can't fully see that mushroom cap. So then I had a choice to make. Like, do I keep slicing tiny bit by tiny bit? Do I just go for it and call that one an oopsie soap? Because I was worried if I kept taking tiny bit by tiny bit, it would throw off the size of the other bars I was going to cut. But here you can see the little mushrooms on the inside. I think they turned out super cute. You can see that one's kind of missing a part, but the design goes all the way through the soap. So at some point with using that one, you will be able to see that design. I'll keep that one for myself, or honestly, I'm pretty sure that Miss Primrose has already claimed that one. Here you can see a piece where that design goes all the way through. I've got my two little mushrooms there and the little toadstools on the top. What do you think of a mushroom soap? I feel like it really goes with that fantasy vibe, but is also very cottagecore, which is super trendy right now. I just think they are darling. One of them's kind of tipped over, which, you know, same. Sometimes I feel a little tippy and a little awkward too. All right. Thank you so much for watching today, guys. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. Drop me a comment. I love to hear what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.